All right. Hello, everyone. This is a Google Slides presentation that we are asking you as parents to watch before coming to the Q&A session with us on Wednesday night. So over the next several minutes, I'm going to be going through a lot of junior high specific information, a lot of information that is specific to my classes, social studies and religion, and also some general information about distance learning and what that experience is going to be like for you and your students at school. Okay, so if you have not viewed Mr. Sen's presentation from a few weeks back, I would recommend that you go back and you do that. He talks a lot about the business plan he presented to the Office of Catholic Schools and sort of our relationship with St. Margaret Mary School. So if you have questions about that, please go back and view his presentation on that. It was done a few weeks ago. Here we have some basic contact information. In the office, if you call the office or if you walk into the office, you're going to see a new face there. The woman who works behind the desk at the office, her name is Mrs. Guyton. And for those who are Spanish speakers, she is bilingual, so feel free to make use of her ability to do that. Okay, so one of the things that Mr. Sen wanted us to stress during these presentations is that we have a lot of new resources, a lot of new technology, a lot of new platforms, and in order for the distance learning program to be effective, our goal as junior high teachers has to be to get everyone on the same page, to get everyone familiar with the tools we have at our disposal. So for the first 2 weeks of school, although we are going to be teaching our subjects, our primary goal is going to be using those lessons that we're teaching in order to help your students become very well versed in how to use the iPad and how to use all of the other resources that we're using. We don't expect everything to go super smoothly at first, and that's okay. There is going to be a little bit of a learning curve, so please be patient and again, just know that our number one job, as we see it during these first 2 weeks, is to get everyone on board with this. And we're not going to move forward with the curriculum until you or your student is well versed in how to use all of this stuff. Okay, so this is an outline of what I'm going to be presenting today. So if you need to skip ahead or go back and watch something, you can refer to this slide. I'm also going to be using two terms that some of you might not be familiar with: synchronous and asynchronous. So synchronous refers to live instruction. We're going to be using a learning platform called Skies to conduct live instruction. Asynchronous refers to kind of what we did back in the springtime. That would be instruction that occurs for students who are not able to attend the synchronous instruction. They're sick, if they don't have Wi-Fi for some reason that day. Asynchronous would be the option for those students. And that would primarily be conducted on Google Classroom. This is a very simple look at the junior high synchronous learning schedule. I did not include the recess on this schedule. Recess is from 10:10 to 10:20 every day. So students will have a little bit of a break then. Notice that school starts at 7:50 a.m. and it ends with the classroom teachers at 12:30 p.m. And each class will have Mr. Marquez back-to-back, myself back-to-back, and Mr. Garavak back-to-back. So yeah, they're shorter days than what we're used to, but we think that with the synchronous learning program, this is the best way to do it. And then, of course, on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, students will have art class with Mrs. Gackstetter, Spanish class with Mr. Corona, and PE with Coach Salazar. All right, so what will we be doing in the afternoons? Our teaching day ends, so to speak, at 12:30, but our workday does not. While your students are at their pullout, their elective classes, we are in our rooms, in our classrooms, Monday to Friday from 1:15 to 3:30. We will not leave the classroom until 3:30. And we're here to provide office hours. Office hours are available to anyone, student or parent, who needs to speak to us about any reason at all. If it's academic, if it's social, if there's something going on that you want to let us know about, office hours are the prime time to reach out to us and to make contact. So yeah, our main job during office hours is to be available to you, to be available to the students. You can schedule appointments with us through Google Meet during office hours. We're also going to be available via email. Now, one thing that's going to be different about communication this year is Mr. Sen has instructed all of the staff not to use Remind anymore to communicate with parents. So that, of course, means we won't be texting with parents either. And this is primarily for legal reasons. We need to keep we need to have documentation or a record of all written communication, and Remind is not reliable for doing that. So all communication that is written needs to be through email. If you want to see us and if you want to have a conversation with us, Google Meet is the way to go. All right, so this is a supply list I'm providing just for my social studies and religion classes. I'm not sure what Mr. Marquez and Mr. Garavak are requiring for their classes, but students, when they come to my class, they need everything that is required on this list. I'm also including things that are optional or recommended based on my experience with distance learning so far and my experience with using an iPad so far. I think it's certainly not necessary that students get anything from this optional or recommended list. But if you want to make the investment in any of these things, I would encourage you to do so because it could make the learning experience easier. Although I do want to stress, if you don't want to make these purchases, that's totally fine. The students can get through the year just fine without them. All right, so this part is sort of the meat of the presentation, and it is mainly directed at students. So the number one thing I want to stress is that this distance learning program we have in place is very, very different than what we did in the spring, right? There's a lot more structure. Not only is it always going to be live instruction if you're a synchronous learner, but there's a lot more rules that we've put in place as a staff with Mr. Sen. So this virtual classroom that you're in is in many ways very similar to being in class in person with us on campus, right? So a good rule of thumb is if you're doing something that would get you in trouble in a regular classroom, don't think you can do it in the virtual classroom just because you're at home. Right? The fact that you are at home does not mean that you can't get in trouble. We can still write you up. We can still give you detentions. You can still be disciplined even if you are learning from home. And fortunately, I haven't had any issues with parents, but I do want to make a quick note because I've heard some horror stories from teachers at other schools. Parents, please always remember that your student's mic or camera is on. I know of teachers who have seen and heard things that from parents who weren't aware that the camera and mic were on, and that caused some problems. So yes, your student's camera and mic are on during class, so just be aware of that. Also, it'd be ideal if the student has a quiet learning environment. I know that dogs bark and babies cry and the doorbell rings and there's noises in the background at home. But the more you can minimize those distractions, the better synchronous learning experience your student is going to have. And students, if you do not abide by classroom rules, we have a very simple solution. We kick you out of the virtual classroom for the rest of the day, and you become an asynchronous learner for the afternoon. So we'll talk about what that means in a little bit. All right, so rules that need to be followed. Number one, uniforms. Students have to wear their uniform tops every single day in the virtual classroom. If you're not wearing your uniform top, you get kicked out of class. So that means on your PE days, you wear your PE tops, you wear your PE shirt, right? If you do come to campus for mass, you have to come dressed in your full dress uniform, right? You can't show up to mass, the school mass, in your polos. You can't show up in other clothes. You have to be wearing your full dress uniform if you come to campus for mass. Also, other dress code rules are still in place, right? You can't wear a hat, you can't wear makeup, you can't color your hair, all of that stuff. Tardies. We do expect that everyone shows up to the virtual classroom on time. Now, I know there are going to be some connectivity issues, there could be some technology problems. So we are going to provide a limited grace period for students who, for whatever reason are having trouble joining the virtual classrooms. But if after a certain amount of time you are late to class, we're going to move you to asynchronous learning for the duration of that class period, meaning you won't be let into the class if you're late. You'll just have to do all that classwork that you missed in the afternoon. And the reason that is because we have shorter class periods during synchronous learning. They're only 40 minutes long. So if you're 10 minutes late to a 40-minute class, really you've missed so much of the class already. It would just be better for you to be asynchronous. So if you're late through a fault of your own, you'll probably get moved to asynchronous for that class period. If you're late through no fault of your own, you're probably the same result, just depending on how late you are. Also, if you're being disruptive or doing anything inappropriate, you're going to get kicked out of class for the rest of the day, and you will have to be asynchronous that afternoon. So behavior, your conduct, is 10% of your overall grade. Now, here's a reward for participating in synchronous learning every day. If you participate in the virtual classroom, meaning you show up on time and you do everything you're supposed to do that day, you do not receive homework. There's no homework for students who participate in the synchronous learning environment. So that means if you're not working, right, if you're messing around, if you're taking a nap, if you're getting up from your desk to always go to the bathroom or getting food, we're just going to say, you know what, you're not participating, you're going to be kicked out of the virtual classroom and you have to be asynchronous. But students who do participate fully in class, no homework. It's a nice reward. All right, students have to come to class prepared. We are not going to allow you to use the bathroom during class. Because again, the classes are very short and we have designated bathroom break times during the day. You can go to the bathroom before class, you can go to the bathroom at 10:10 to 10:20 during your break, or you can wait till 12:30 to go to the bathroom. We do not want you to bring food or drinks into class unless it's water. Also, we need you working at a table or a desk or a countertop. You can't be laying out by the pool. You can't be on the floor. You can't be laying on your bed. You are in work mode. You need to be seated on a surface that you can do work on. And finally, of course, no phones, right? If we see you on your phones, we're going to kick you out of the class and you'll be asynchronous. Okay, so I've used this term asynchronous a lot. what exactly does that mean? Well, asynchronous learning is basically going to be everything that we do on Google Classroom, right? So if you get kicked out of a class, or if for some reason you're not able to come to class, you are automatically an asynchronous learner for that day. So what that means is that each day in the afternoon, you're going to have to check Google Classroom because by 3:30, all of the work that was done in the virtual classroom will be posted on Google Classroom. Right? So all of the work, all of the reading, all of the videos we watched, everything we did is going to be posted on the Google Classroom. All asynchronous work is due the next day by 3:30 p.m. Right? So again, I want to stress, if you are synchronous, meaning you came to the virtual classroom that day, you did everything you're supposed to do, you're done for the day. Right? Asynchronous is just for the people who got kicked out of class or weren't in class. Right? Asynchronous work is due the following day by 3:30 p.m. If you do not turn in your asynchronous work, you are marked absent. So even if you show up to class in the morning, let's say you show up to class, my social studies class, and after 5 minutes, I say, you know what? You're messing around. I'm tired of dealing with this. I kick you out of class. You have to do all the work that you missed that day. And if you do not do it, you get marked absent, right? So you can't say, oh, Mr. Bruce, I was there, but you kicked me out. No, you are absent because you got moved over to the asynchronous group and you did not do the work, right? That's how we're going to determine attendance. All right. Now, I do know some students, for a variety of reasons, are going to be primarily asynchronous learners. So if you think that will be you, parents, if that's going to be your student, please reach out to us so we can make the asynchronous learning program fit your students' needs a little bit better, right? We don't want asynchronous learning to be like a punishment, or it is a punishment for the students who get kicked out, but for the students who we know for various reasons can't be in class in the morning, we do want to provide a program that works for them in the afternoon. So please reach out to us if that's the case. All right, so that's the bulk of the presentation. We're going to talk about a few other things, starting with communication here. The best way to communicate with us is email. We check our email Monday through Thursday, and we'll always respond within 24 hours. If you email us on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, depending on how busy we are, what we're doing, it might be the case that your email doesn't get an answer until Monday. All right. If you need to have a conversation with us, please make use of our office hours and use the appointment slot feature on Google Meet in order to schedule an appointment with us. And then, of course, prime communication time with us, as I said before, is our office hour time from 1:15 to 3:30. That is our main job, is to communicate with teachers and parents. Oh, one other thing that I want to mention about office hours that I think I skipped over is that if a student has a scheduled elective or pullout class, PE, art, or Spanish, that student is not allowed to make use of office hours with us during that time, even if you're asynchronous. So if you are supposed to be in PE class, right, and we get a message from you asking about maybe a question for an assignment that you had that morning or an upcoming test or something like that, we are not going to respond because you are supposed to be in PE class at the time. The same is true even if you are asynchronous. All right, so students, you are not allowed to communicate with us during office hours if you have a scheduled PE, art, or Spanish class at that time, right? Because if you have the time to reach out to us, you have the time to be in that class instead. All right. Also, another note about communication, Mr. Sen wanted us to stress that if you have concerns about anything going on in the classroom, whether that be, the way Mr. Marquez teaches math, or the way Mr. Bruce handles a discipline issue, or the way that Mr. Garavak graded a writing project. If you have an issue with that, if you're having a problem with that, please communicate with the teacher first before reaching out to Mr. Sen or myself. So I am the assistant principal this year, so days Mr. Sen is not available. If you're having issues that require administrative intervention and you would normally go to Mr. Sen, you can come to me and I will handle that in my capacity as assistant principal. If your student is sick, or if you have a doctor's appointment in the morning and you want to still be a synchronous learner for that day, we can make that happen. So if you have a doctor's appointment at 9 a.m. And you want to return to synchronous learning at 10:20 a.m., you can do that, but you need a doctor's note. You need to send your teacher a doctor's note saying, hey, I wasn't sleeping in, I was at the doctor, here's my doctor's note, please let me into the virtual classroom. And then we'll let you in. So you'll be asynchronous for the work that you missed during your doctor's appointment, but you'll be synchronous for the rest of the day, which will be nice. Also, sick students. So sick students, I think I misspoke. If you're sick, we expect you to get better. So, stay in bed, drink some tea, do whatever it takes to get better. You're not going to be a synchronous learner that day. But if you don't let us know that you're sick with a doctor's note, you are automatically an asynchronous learner. Remember, if you're asynchronous, all of your work is due in 24 hours, right? So you need to let us know if the reason you're not in class is because you're sick, right? Because if we don't have that doctor's note, we are going to assume and so we're just going to assume you're asynchronous and you're going to have to turn in all your work in 24 hours, right? So a doctor's note is a way for you to let us know, no, that's not what's going on. I'm actually sick. And then we can give you additional time to make up your missed work. Okay, communication platforms. So Google Classroom. Google Classroom is going to be used primarily by all teachers for asynchronous learners, right? We're not supposed to be using Google Classroom for our live instruction, right? Every now and then there might be an assignment that we think works better with Google Classroom than the other learning platforms, but 99% of the time, if something is on Google Classroom, that is because it is there for asynchronous learners. So asynchronous kids, you have to check Google Classroom each day. It'll be updated by 3:30 p.m. each day. Every single thing that we do in a synchronous virtual classroom will be posted on Google Classroom for you to see. Also, you'll see all due dates and due times on Google Classroom as well. The second learning platform we're using, and this is the one that we are primarily using, is something called Skies. So Skies, if you're not familiar with it, is a really cool live instruction virtual classroom program. Right? It gives us teachers a lot of flexibility and a lot of leeway and a lot of power that we didn't have before over distance learning. And it allows us to essentially teach an entire class and get 100% class participation. We can see what every single student is doing at any given time. So Skies is going to be like 99% of what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. All of your work is going to be on Skies if you're synchronous learning. If you're asynchronous, Google Classroom. Synchronous is going to be Skies. And so we're going to teach you how to use Skies. And then, of course, GradeLink. Check GradeLink frequently. Unlike Mrs. Diaz de Leon, Mr. Sen wants teachers to be updating GradeLink on a weekly basis. This doesn't mean that at the end of every week, all student grades are going to be fully updated, right? Because frankly, there are some assignments we give out that take longer than a week to grade and to enter into GradeLink. But it does mean that you're going to see activity on GradeLink weekly. So if you want to know how your student is doing, we encourage you to check GradeLink. Most of you already do that on a regular basis. So yeah, just be aware that it'll be updated more frequently because that's what Mr. Sen wants us to do. All right, grading. Grades are going to work quite differently than what students are used to, because during distance learning, the grading structure is going to be very different. And this is the grading structure we're going to keep in place for the duration of the first trimester, even if we have students return to campus in the classroom. For the entire trimester, this is how grades are going to work. So basically, the biggest difference is tests and quizzes are worth only about half of what they used to be worth, right? Tests and quizzes used to be worth 70% of the grade. Now they're only worth somewhere between 30 and 35% of the grade. Also, conduct is a bigger part of the grade, right? If the way you act in your virtual classroom is going to be a big chunk of the grade. It's 10% of your overall grade. So if you're someone who's not doing their work in the virtual classroom, if you're getting kicked out of the virtual classroom, that's going to hurt you. The remaining chunk, 55% or so, is going to be divided among classwork and participation primarily, right? These are the biggest parts of the overall grade, and this is because of what the SKYS platform enables us to do. But there's also going to be some projects. Your grade is going to be reflective of effort and a bunch of other factors as well. All right, my subjects, social studies. So all social studies are going to be taught using something called the Discovery Education Social Studies Tech Book, right? There's a 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade tech book. This is 100% online. Students have access to this through their school accounts, right? So I am not going to pass out a textbook. Everything you need for social studies this year is going to be on Discovery Ed using the online tech book. What does this mean? It means no slides. I think if I'm really quiet, I could probably hear students cheering very loudly right now. Yeah, I think I hear a few. So yes, no slides. This means that the way I conduct the class is going to be very different than what students are used to. It's going to be less lecture time and more group work, more daily assignments. And that's just because that's how the Discovery Education curriculum is set up, right? Also, tests and quizzes are going to be based 100% on Discovery Ed's textbook content alone. I'm not going to ask questions on tests or quizzes from anything that is outside of the textbook. So 6th graders, you're going to be learning ancient world history. 7th graders, we're going to be learning medieval and modern world history. And 8th graders are going to be learning my favorite subject, United States history. It's primarily based on the United States Constitution. All right, what about the religion class? So the religion class, unlike the social studies class, is going to be pretty similar to what students are used to. One big difference is we're going to be using a Sadler religion textbook this year as a supplementary text. Primarily, we are still going to be the content is going to be selections from the Bible. So 6th graders, for example, we read Exodus and we read different parts of the New Testament. We read the entire Gospel of Mark, for example. We read parts of the other 3 Gospels. We read parts of Acts of the Apostles, right? So the curriculum is primarily based on the Bible, but we are going to be using a textbook as well. Seventh graders, we also have different parts of the Bible that we read, but there's more of a focus on church history and the Mass in seventh grade. Seventh grade, you'll also have a textbook. Eighth grade, you will have a textbook as well, but you're also going to be focusing primarily on different readings, different books of the Bible, and also Catholic moral issues, which is very fun. Another thing that might make students cheer is because the bishop has put a dispensation over the diocese, meaning the Mass obligation is no longer an obligation. There are no Mass reviews. So unless the bishop removes the dispensation, there will be no Mass reviews. And like I said, we're going to be working out of the textbook more frequently. Projects. I have decided to postpone most of the first trimester projects to the second and third trimesters on the assumption that, like you, I am very hopeful and maybe optimistic that in the second and third trimesters we're going to have returned to classroom instruction. So I just made the decision to push a lot of these projects back into the second and third trimester. That way I could have more of a hands-on experience with the students and their projects. But seventh grade social studies students, I did keep one project for you in this first trimester. You're going to be doing a Rome report, and I'll give you details on that later. All right, so that's it for the presentation. If you have not already watched Mr. Garavac's and Mr. Marquez's presentations, they posted theirs on YouTube. I've included the links here. We also have a Google Meet, which is going to be this Wednesday, September 2nd at 6 o'clock. So I've included the information there. The Google Meet is going to be, it's going to be about an hour long. So if you go to the Google Meet and you feel like all of your questions have been answered by 6:15, you're free to leave. But basically we have a 60-minute window to answer whatever questions you have. We are not going to be presenting anything during the Google Meet. It is just a Q&A session. So we're just going to open it up. And you'll be able to type your questions into the comment box section, I think, on Google Meet. So we'll read them out loud and we will answer them to the best of our ability. So yes, click on the link to join, or of course, join us by phone. Either one will work.